Hey, Natalie, we're here. We are in our after party, and we are beginning almost mid-sentence with you with some nugget of what you were just saying with us about the number.
So, yeah, so I think a lot of us in our own lives, we think I can be a good person and I'll deal with the money later, you know. But the truth is that in order to be a good person, we really do need to deal with our money, because otherwise we can have areas of our life that are fear-based, our own fear-based. And, you know, like, you can't meditate your way out of fear over money. You really have to solve the problem. Like, you know, like that Tibetan saying, a sore in the mouth must be healed in the mouth. If you have fear around money, if you're deeply in debt, if you lost more than half in the Great Recession and you haven't made changes, all of these things are more important than you realize. They become super important when we're in a recession. Like, it's hard for us to remember back to 2008, but I was at Zuccotti Park yesterday where Occupy Wall Street was, you know, initially, and I actually happened to be there the morning that Occupy started too. So, you know, I was there and I was filming it. I was one of the first people that put it out on Huffington Post about that as well. And, you know, you don't want to wait until it's a crisis to deal with your money. You know right now whether or not you have fear around money. And if we're really talking about a charter for compassion, moving out of fear-based decisions into enlightened responses, then you have to acknowledge that you have a fear in your life that needs to be addressed so that you can, in every aspect, be in integrity and enlightened response. Because a fear-based person with regard to earning income is just going to earn income at whatever they do and try to earn more, which is part of what we were talking about, that cycle of a predatory economy, placing yourself above everybody else, above everybody else's needs, your own needs first. And yes, I do believe that it is a very good idea to provide for yourself and your family. But I am living proof that that does not have to be at someone else's expense. Like, if you think of a peach tree, I can eat all the peaches I want, and there's still more than enough for other people to partake of the peaches off that tree. You know, every harvest, it always produces way more than I can eat. So the universe has ample proof that it is not necessarily that economy has to be I win, you lose. It can be a win-win. You know, we talk about win-wins a lot. So.
Well, you remind me in your first call of the video that we watched of the couple in Las Vegas. I can't remember.
Yes.
But who clearly went through a huge process. Can you, living the life that they dream. Can you share a little bit about that? Just as another example. I mean.
Yeah. And I think they're in the process of, you know, really filming their story and sharing it with the world. So hopefully in a year, you'll be able to see their entire thing. But I've been blessed to know them before they had their son, and, you know, before they moved, and all of the 3 life-threatening challenges that they had. And it was an incredible journey. I mean, I think it's kind of the journey a lot of us go through and I think it's very appropriate to talking about a predatory economy, is that so he's a Cirque du Soleil performer. She's a yoga teacher. They live in Las Vegas. They meet, they fall in love. They're happening because they're at the height of their career. They open up a yoga studio above Whole Foods. So they're at the forefront of the mindfulness in Las Vegas. They have a young son, and they realize this is the burr in their side. They're driving 20 minutes to teach yoga and mindfulness and sustainability, right? He gets in a motorcycle accident that breaks his back. His son breaks his leg, and his wife almost has a life-threatening anemia event where she's forced into learning more about healing through herbal remedies instead of just pharmaceuticals. He's forced to acknowledge that he was trying to get somewhere too fast. And then, of course, they have this parental protection instinct around their child. They decided to just push pause and go and observe how people live in another culture. So they went to observe the indigenous cultures down in Peru in the Sacred Valley. And they were only there for 10 days. And that wasn't the only thing that shifted for them. Then they came back, and I happened to visit them in Vegas. And he's a retreat attendee, full disclosure. He's someone I mentor. And, so we were talking about his money and this and that, and how they felt so out of alignment. She said, in Peru, these women would come down from their farms and have an open market. There was no plastic. You just bought from them, and you went and you cooked it and you ate it. And she said, I'm having such a difficult time eating my organic food that's wrapped in plastic, or driving 20 minutes to teach yoga. And I said, well, what are the solutions that you guys have thought of? And they were like, well, we're thinking about this brave, dramatic move. And I was like, I'm all for it.
Right on. Yeah.
I mean, obviously they're not doing it because I'm saying I'm all for it. I'm only there in a supportive role to help them answer the questions about money and all of this sort of thing, right? But that's obviously the universe is yet to reveal what kind of way they're going to launch the rocket ship of their life of their dreams. But I can already see it happening, and I have very regular conversations with them. And she was the mother, Jada. She was excited because her son was in school, and one of their culminating activities was a nature walk, and he was showing everybody the difference between a poisonous mushroom and one you could eat.
Wow.
Just out on a nature walk.
That's awesome. Wow, that's a big shift of, shifting to a way of compassion and being more in alignment with values.
Yeah, and you can see that again, I said, what they've done is bold and courageous and brave, far more than most people would be willing to do. But you can also see that the universe is going to rush in to support that.
Oh, right, it's so true. Kenya, I just saw your eyes light up with this. Do you want to add anything or comment?
Well, no, I just am enjoying her relating about that couple. And I guess when you think of a little person learning and being able to share that information, that's just so special.
Yeah. And I mean, how many kids today, it's so funny because we have a movement in the Earth Gratitude Project, and you guys can learn more at earthgratitude.org, our organic farming and schoolyard gardening, that sort of thing. It's interesting because how many kids even really know that a carrot is grown in the ground? They don't really know that. Or as Ron Finley says, kids that grow kale, eat kale. It's so funny. I went and visited the Edible Schoolyard in Berkeley, California. So it's Alice Waters' project, and she put an edible schoolyard at the local middle school like 18 years ago, and it's still thriving because she oversees it. And one of the kids, I said, what's your favorite thing to eat? She said, kale pesto. I was like, kale pesto. As a kid, it was so funny. But it's delicious, especially when you just picked it.
That's awesome. What a great idea.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Sandy and Mike want to comment? I've been doing a lot of talking thus far.
I'd like to comment on the packaging of products.
Yeah.
Lisa and I have tried multiple things. The last one was these blendy things that we would get once a week delivered to our house.
Yeah.
And it's all organic and it's all great, but all the packaging, all these little Ziploc bags and all these plastic containers and all this stuff. And I try to save it, so I can use it, or recycle it, but still there's so much to it. Yeah. It's just terrible.
Does Blue Apron?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do the farmer boxes, I've seen a lot of farmer boxes where they don't include any plastic in it. You might want to look at that.
Yeah, we just found one and it's really good.
Yeah. I'll tell you one little trick I'm doing now, which I'm still a little bit embarrassed by it, but I'm determined to make this like a movement so I don't have to be embarrassed by it anymore. So like I go to a restaurant and I typically eat half as much as I do. And I kind of like taking it, either I take it home or I give it to a homeless person, whatever. I just don't like throwing it away. So I actually have a backpack where I go almost everywhere with. And by the way, fashion designers out there, please make backpacks and waist packs sexy again, because I am not going back to a purse. I'm sticking with my backpack. especially since I do so much walking and my next car is going to be a bike, but I actually have a little plastic container that I take so that I'm not using their to-go packaging. So, and I'm still, like I said, I'm still a little embarrassed. I always kind of try to put it in there when the waiter's not looking, but I think that, every way we can. I see people at farmers markets now, and I saw I love Harry's Berries farmers markets, and they have like the most delicious berries. They just taste like candy. And all of these women, that people line up, and you'd see all these women, especially mostly retired women, and they were carrying their own plastic containers to put the berries in so that they wouldn't have to take the containers.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because there's a Thai restaurant that we love to take food from. And I recently, Mike and I were talking, I said, I think I want to start, if we're going to get takeout, go there and bring containers, because I don't like all this plastic. And this is how you stop the predatory economy, little things like that too. And to your point, a whole movement. So that's awesome. I totally support you. Sitting at your dinner.
Embarrassing.
Okay, I support you too. I love that idea. My husband and I, since we're empty nesters and we're both so busy, and sometimes we don't even think about dinner until 5 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
We're hungry and my fridge is bare, and it's cheaper actually for us to eat out. I'm going to start doing that. And I think what I'll do is I'll start a movement, and I'll start taking pictures while I'm doing it and post it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Let everybody know that Natalie inspired me to do this. So there's so much to say about balance too, because I'd like to say I live in a conscious household. We drive an electric car. I have water barrels. The city paid me to I think we got $400 or $500 for removing our front lawn.
Wonderful. And
then also $50 rebate on all of our water barrels. So we actually made money becoming, conscious. We've got my husband is militant about closing windows when the air is on and opening windows when it's just cold enough. So we're really thoughtful about that. And then at the same time, I can drive myself insane. Like, okay, for example, food delivery. You want to eat healthy, you want to support organic food, you don't want to drive to the store, but guess what? Somebody's using gasoline to get that food to you, and you can just really boil everything down to be so dependent on those things, like you say, that we pick it. But I think that there's a balance. Like my sister loves to brag that she spent $2 on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Well, Vicki, how do you think you got it so cheap? Right? Yeah. Who is making that t-shirt? So can you speak just a little bit about, or as much as you want, about what happens to look at our world right now, where there's such a polarization of economy here, where we have people that are really struggling to put food on their table, and they have to also clothe themselves and their children so they can have nice clothes. So do they eat at McDonald's, or do they buy a $2 shirt at Walmart? How do we break these chains that bind us? Is there an easy answer to?
Well, I think that the truth is, it's really hard to have one fits all solution for eradicating poverty. But there are certain things that people should be aware of, so that they can, and it's hard a lot of times when we're trying to solve problems, we think we're great and we just need to solve the problem of them or us or everybody outside us. And the truth is, there are certain things that help a lot in leveling the playing field in terms of the economy. Education helps a lot. So healthcare helps tremendously. Awareness around food. So, if you think about McDonald's, and you might think, oh, it's cheaper. But if you factor in health, it's not cheaper. So, and I'll just go to Ron Finley. So Ron Finley lives in a food desert in South Central LA. And he's driving around and he's saying, why are there more fast food restaurants and dialysis clinics than anything here? and they are very correlated. So, you know, when you eat crap, you're going to become unhealthy. You're going to become obese. You're more at risk for diabetes. That's very expensive. That health is the most, one of the most important things you can do in life. So like if you start thinking about how you can make it, eradicate poverty, a big piece of that is improving educational systems in impoverished areas, improving access to fresh food and vegetables like Ron Finley is doing, like the Compton Gardens are doing. And they're actually doing that in schools. So if you want, you know, one of 2 or 3 or 4 of the best things that you could do if you wanted to eradicate poverty would be to volunteer to put in and to maintain an edible schoolyard like Alice Waters did for Martin Luther King Middle School. That middle school was a very poor middle school in Berkeley. And she set up a foundation. That is one of the largest edible schoolyards in all of the United States. And it's been there for over 15 years. And they have a model that other schools can do. The problem with edible schoolyards is usually that if one person goes in and does it, and they don't commit to maintaining it, then the next year you might not have that parent that wants to do it. And so it just falls fallow. So, you know, education is the highest correlating factor with income. If we were properly educating kids that lived in poor communities and allowing them to get an education within the second generation, that area would not be as impoverished. So these are all things, again, it's all wisdom is, I say wisdom is the cure. So we have to become more aware so that the work that we do is more effective.
Education, absolutely. I mean, really, just awareness of the implications. And that speaks back to what you're saying about being courageous and, you know, just taking the time. We do, and I think it's unconscious, but we as a society move in a selfish way, right? How does this make me feel in this moment? And how am I going to benefit? So how can we be aware of how we are impacting others, which is very much about what the charter is about. It's about, you know, being willing to identify the suffering in others, but also the suffering we're causing in others too, and our impact.
And knowing, you know, knowing how we can act, that's going to give the best result. It's kind of, I mean, you know, we go back to a lot of spiritual masters. So the idea that Jesus would say, I'd rather teach you to fish than give you a fish. Well, that's the truth, is that you could go and you could, and I do a lot. I oftentimes will, you know, get that to-go box for a homeless person, but I'm not changing, I'm feeding them that day. I'm not changing their life. So, you know, being able to be effective with our actions, and that requires wisdom and greater awareness. Like, I'll just give you another example. Someone had texted me saying, oh, you know, and again, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and some of it is out there intentionally so that, you know, you're kind of led down a path, right? So there's this misinformation that cows create more pollution than cars. Now, that's something that was perpetuated by the oil industry. And the reason that they do that is not so that you will stop eating cow meat. It's so that you think, oh, well, you know, my car is not as bad as eating cows, right? So you don't think you should stop polluting the air with the car because you think, and this is not true. The reason that they do this equation where they're able to say that a cow creates more pollution than a car is because they're talking about a cow in an industrial farm that is fed grain that is farmed far away and trucked to it. So all of that is not sustainable. A cow that is grass-fed on a ranch is not creating methane gas with its farts that are equivalent to a car. You know what I mean? But they kind of imply that. So people go out there. Now, yeah, could you help the planet by eating less meat? Yes. Could you help the planet even more by eating grass-fed organic meat? Yes. Even more than cutting out meat, by supporting grass-fed organic. So again, it's understanding that there is so much misinformation out there. And that's because advertising, even, we saw that, this is by now not something that people, at least in the intelligence community, debate. Our election was definitely influenced by Russian hacking. Now, the sad part about that is that people fell for it, right? But there's all kinds of, even if you look at that 80% of us are exposed to scams all the time. So there's always someone online or trying to email us, or even now trying to call us on our cell phone to get us to do something, that is going to benefit them and perhaps harm us. So, wisdom is really important these days. And there's a lot of things out there that are thrown out as facts that are simply not true, like healthcare, for example, how expensive it is. Why is healthcare so expensive? Why is health insurance so expensive? Guess why? Because 1/3 of Americans are obese. That is the biggest reason that healthcare is so expensive, because we are unhealthy. Health is the best health insurance. Get a nation healthy, and we're going to spend a lot less on healthcare, and our healthcare costs will go down. So everybody gets kind of in this fight over the cost of healthcare, health insurance, Obamacare, and nobody gets into what's the real problem, which is obesity, which is malnutrition, which is eating better, which is having healthy food that has nutrition in it. There's also another thing that's out there, and this is heartbreaking to me. Like if you Google, is organic food better for you than conventional food? There was a study done that is promoted even by the National Institute of Health that says it's not. But that's not the case. Conventional food has pesticides. Pesticides are highly correlated with a number of problems, a lot of them neurological. Organic food has greater EFAs, essential fatty acids. That's super powerful antioxidants. These are all things that are absolutely proven on a scientific metadata basis, but they're hard to get to. So that's, again, earthgratitude.org. That's why that initiative was started, was to help spread the word of the facts, out there.
You remind me of something that's actually very important to keep track of, with all of these various studies that come out from reputable sources or supposedly reputable sources, whether it's any kind of academic, high-level academic institution or a national healthcare institution or whatever. When they give you research, look at first and foremost who funded the research. Because when you see who funded it, you also know where there's possibly a bias, where there's, to your point. So who funded the research? That's my first question, that says that conventional food is as good or fine versus organic,
And it's heartbreaking, because the person that actually did the study that shows very clearly a metadata analysis. In other words, what he did is he crunched the data on all of it, right? He took everybody who's ever done research on conventional versus organic, and then he crunched the data and he spit out the results. Organic food has essential fatty acids, no pesticides, not the hard toxic minerals and metals. All of that is that the other the other studies that are out there, he actually has proof that one of the most well-cited studies out there had ignored data in order to come up with those results. And I have been trying to find another scientist who would corroborate that, and I come up dry, because so many of our agricultural programs are funded by the chemical companies.
Oh, well, it's good information to know. It's not pretty information, but it does also help us as consumers begin to make a shift.
I think truth is beauty.
Yeah,
truth is beautiful.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, we're at the 9:30 mark now, so I think we should call it a day or an evening, depending upon where everyone is. And I just want to thank everyone for being with us, or who is watching after the fact. Thank you all, and thank you, Natalie, so much for your gems of wisdom. And thank you. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, guys.
Have a great day.
Enjoy.